faithfuls, the Nothing But Niners crew is back, and today we are bringing you guys the behind enemy lines for week number 2, all right, of the preseason. The 49ers are about to go up against the Denver Broncos. They have had joint practices and all, and we are here to discuss all of that. Before we get to everyone and the guests that we have on for today, I have to go through the formalities. We want to thank you guys for checking us out here on YouTube. If this is your first time here or you happen to stumble across this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button if you like what you see, all right? And if you do subscribe, you want to make sure that you hit that notification bell so you know when we do unscheduled videos such as this one. You're not going to want to miss a thing, I promise you guys. The bonus of being live is that you get to come in here, you get to chat in the live room, and if we see any good questions, we can even pop them up on the screen and ask whatever guest that we have on here for you. So as long as you guys are respectful, we'll see if the guest has time for some questions occasionally. So you're going to want to see these shows live, I promise you. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you know exactly when that happens. All right, guys, also make sure you check out the website. It is www.nothingbutniners.com. We've got articles, we've got merch, we've got guest page for fans where you guys send us the pictures of you and your game day attire, your lovely pets and things like that. We've got social media pages. Our Twitter and our Snapchat are Nothing But 9 ERS. So you guys make sure you check us out there. You see that at the bottom of the screen, Nothing But the number 9 ERS. And then you guys also make sure you hit us up on Instagram as well as Facebook. It's Nothing But Niners, spelled all the way out with the spaces in between. Okay, guys. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring in my man Scott here. Scott, how you doing over there, buddy?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good indeed. Excited for preseason to really crack on with second week now.
Absolutely, man. I know that people have missed you, Scott. Some people asking about you from time to time, so they want to see you. And then our guest, our man of the hour, or a couple of minutes here, Benjamin Allbright. He is here to bring us some inside information from what we are doing here. He's been here at the camps and everything. Benjamin, how are you today, man?
I'm doing well. How about you guys?
So far, so good anyway. I've got no complaints. What about you, Scott?
All good.
All right. So, I mean, what we do with the Behind Enemy Line section, we want to find out some information on whoever the team is going up against. Now, the Broncos have had some changes from the coaching staffs and things like that. So we want to get your opinion on that all. Let's start there. What changes have happened with the Denver Broncos, and what differences are you seeing with how Fangio is running the team versus the previous regime?
Well, there's certainly more attention to detail, more of coaches being coaches and less of coaches trying to be buddy-buddy with players. And that's just from the coaching side of the house. There's certainly a very specific, very structured standard that is set. And if people are unable to meet that, they thank them kindly and send them on their way. I will say that there's a schematic change defensively. They've gone from being a cover 1, cover 0 type football team, similar to what Wade Phillips runs on defense, to being Vic Fangio's hallmark defense, which is a lot of zone, umbrella zone, cover 2, cover 4, cover 6 match. Sometimes some man under, but basically sending only 4 after the quarterback and dropping everybody else into coverage. I'm sure you guys as Niners fans are very familiar with Vic Fangio's defense, so I don't need to tell you. But schematically, that defense seems to have energized the defenders. Guys like Justin Simmons, who has been red hot in camp. I mean, the guy looks amazing. And I'm not trying to, I hate when people say that because, you cover the team and this, that, and the other, but I haven't seen somebody this dominant in a training camp since I was up at Seattle watching Earl Thomas in camp at the safety position. I mean, he looks ridiculous out there in this zone. He's not a man safety, but in this zone, he looks ridiculous. He did pick 6 Garoppolo on day 1 of the combined practices as well. But it benefits the guys. This team, these D-backs have been upset the last couple of years because when you're in man, you're chasing a receiver around all game, right? And so when you get to the fourth quarter, you're tired. You get gassed. And if you go back and look at the Broncos last year, I think they laid out the blueprint to beat Pat Mahomes. They had him stuffed through 3 quarters until Mahomes did Mahomes magic and, does what he does. And they were just so gassed at that point, they couldn't do anything. And so, I think that there's an energy, an attitude here that there hasn't been the last couple of years. And there's confidence in the coaching staff where there wasn't that really in Vance Joseph. Vance had 1 year as a DC. It wasn't a particularly great year either. And there wasn't a lot of confidence in the authenticity that he was able to deliver like there is in Vic Fangio.
All right, Scott.
Yeah, I was just interested in kind of discussing the improvements under Fangio. I mean, clearly, one of the best defenses in the league last year. Compared to kind of pre-Vance Joseph, the Broncos were actually slightly better than the Chicago Bears defense that Fangio had the previous season. and the personnel hasn't changed significantly. And if anything, you look at the personnel they brought in, they kind of plugged the holes that you look like they thought they had. Kareem Jackson's come in, Quarters cornerback from Houston. He's come in, Bryce Callen's come in. Is this a defense that can kind of make the leap and then go straight back to kind of where the Bears defense was this year? Or do you think it might take another kind of year of development under Fangio before they reach those levels? It sounds like you're saying they've got Justin Simmons, who could be an elite safety in this scheme, much like we had Eddie Jackson. They've also got Von Miller, Brad Chubb, and Chris Harris. I mean, that's a lot of talent. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think they're going to be a top 10 defense this year. Now, the offense is still a work in progress, but the defensive side of the ball looks good. Their Achilles heel really is the inside linebacker. They've had some injuries there. The athleticism isn't what you want. Josie Jewell has been dinged up. Todd Davis is out till the final preseason game. Joe Jones came in and provided a shot at athleticism, but then he got hurt. Alexander Johnson hasn't been what they wanted. They've moved Jamal Carter down from safety to inside linebacker to kind of provide some of that. And then they've moved Justin Hollins, as kind of a hybrid edge rusher, and then move him back when they run 2-4-5 defenses as the other inside linebacker. And when they do that, they tend to run a cover 2 and drop him back into zone. And what that does, because of his length, it creates a very difficult throw on that post bucket throw in cover 2 if you're trying to split the safeties. So, I think they've got a plan here. I just don't know. That inside linebacker position is still a weak link. The rest of it looks pretty good. Shelby Harris gets after the quarterback. The ends, Wolf and Gotsis get after the quarterback. The young guy, Draymond Jones, has looked pretty good. DeMarcus Walker, the guy they picked early a couple of years ago, and they moved him to outside linebacker, and then he finally's put on the weight. He's up to 300 pounds, and he has looked good along that defensive line. So there's some pieces here on the defense. Kareem Jackson's playing the other safety opposite Justin Simmons. Bryce Callahan, Yadam, and Harris at the corners, and then Will Parks is kind of the backup safety and dime backer in those situations, and he's rangy with a lot of athleticism as well.
Was it surprising that they went with Noah Fant at number 10, given the guys who are on the board? Potentially given what Vic Fangio thinks about a linebacker, was it interesting to go Noah Fant and that kind of tight end at number 10 rather than the linebacker?
Well, they traded down from 10, but yes. I think that I think it wasn't a shock because we knew the people that they were looking at that position. We knew at number 10 it was either going to be Bush, a tight end, or a trade back. We knew that. But the question really was what were they going to do. And Bush came highly recommended from Vic Fangio's buddy Harbaugh up there at Michigan. And so a lot of people really thought that's the direction they were going to go. I think the front office kind of felt like that given the fact that they're moving to a scheme where those linebackers are going to be in zone instead of just chasing a tight end all over the field, that the athleticism gap maybe wasn't as big a deal as it could have been in other situations, and the chance to get another explosive weapon, because this offense doesn't really have a lot of them, was kind of the direction that they wanted to go. Noah Fant is probably the second most explosive player on this offense. If Emmanuel Sanders would be the most, and then Phillip Lindsay in the running back position. But outside of those guys, you don't have a lot of speed, and you certainly don't have the speed to challenge defenses vertically. So teams don't have to roll safety coverage on the Broncos. They just got to kind of cover Emmanuel, and that's it. So now you got Noah Fant, who, by the way, he put Tart on skates the other day. It was funny to watch. It was pretty bad to watch. If you're a fan of getting a DB getting a move put on him, he put Jaquiski Tarts on skates, and there was some laughter, hooting and hollering from both sidelines as well as the media and the crowd. Give the chance to get a weapon like that, I think, was just too good to pass up. The fact that they could also acquire some more picks out of it, which ultimately led to them being able to get both Dalton Reisner and Drew Lock, two guys they wanted, and still have a third rounder left over this coming season to be able to use. I think they felt like that was for them the way to go. I think they felt like Hollins was a project guy they could hybrid, and they could look for linebackers later, feeling like they weren't as vital given the scheme.
Awesome. Now, you were privy to some information that we weren't, and that's the joint practices. You've been there, you've been watching these teams and things like that. We want to get an overall view. I saw some of your tweets. You were talking about how well Marquise Goodwin was standing out for the 49ers. And that's going to bring me to something, if you can tie it all together, then great. I know you can do it because I've seen your work. But talk about the wide receivers that were standing out and then the differences between the secondaries now that Woods is gone, and what's happening over there also. So maybe like kind of how what we should expect versus what you guys are doing now and how it's all working.
Well, I thought to get back to Goodwin, let's start there. I thought Goodwin looked dominant both days. He was clearly the fastest guy on the field. That was never in question. But his ability to sell the deep route and gear down and then cut inside was putting some of those safeties in some awkward spots. He made a great one-handed grab split the safeties in practice. It was one of those wow moments you wish was captured on video so people could see it. But he routinely bested the guys that were covering him, and it kind of looked effortless on his part. And that's no small feat when you're going up against a Chris Harris, when you're going up against a Simmons, Justin Simmons in that deep zone. Like, those guys are good athletes, and if you're making them look like they can't cover you, that's saying something. I saw Pettis get free a number of times, had a blatant drop. He was wide open. He roasted Lindell Stevens so bad I wondered if he was at a luau. And then he turned around and dropped the ball. It hit him right in the hands. I mean, it wasn't overthrown. It hit him in stride in the hands, and he just watched it go right through his hands. And for Pettis, a guy I've been hearing a lot of good things about, that was one I was trying to keep my eye on, and I was just shaking my head. At the dry, it just seemed like he's careless with the football, lack concentration at times. I don't know. Maybe he's a gamer. Maybe he's a guy that shows up in games and just has the bad practice. I don't know. But in my couple of days watching that, it was something that stood out at me from that side of the ball. You guys got some speed at running back. That was obvious. They didn't get a lot of running back work in, just some generic stuff. Didn't want to get anybody hurt. But you've got some speed there. And of course, Juszczyk. That's if I'm playing Madden, that's the first player I trade for whenever I'm playing for it, because he's the ultimate Swiss Army knife weapon. You can put him at H-back, tight end, fullback, running back, whatever you want. So Garoppolo was hit or miss. In 7-on-7s, he's so quick. He's so quick getting rid of the ball. Like, he's such a fast processor and has such a quick delivery that in 7-on-7s he looks pretty good. But then when they got into team, he had some problems. When they had 11-on-11, he started having some problems. That's where he got housed by Simmons. I thought Nick Mullins looked pretty good. I know the Nick Mullins story pretty well. We've talked to Rich Gangarello a few times here. I know that story front and back. And what a find as a probably long-term spot start backup guy for you guys. CJ Beathard and Spite didn't really look like they belonged. And that's probably the nicest way I can say that. On the defensive side of the ball, the speed of the linebacking core really jumped out. Greenlaw and Warner really were turning on the Jets. And Warner's not afraid to pop somebody, man. It was fun watching him get out there and lower the pads. He was lowering the boom on some people, and it was to the point where it got a little chippy. He and Greenlaw lowered on Big Dave Williams coming out of the backfield, and that was where the altercation of the fight yesterday started. There was some exception taken to how hard he hit. So Philip Lindsay waited 2 plays and then turned around and went back and instigated some stuff. And ultimately, Bug Howard and Brendan Langley got thrown out of practice, and everything kind of settled down from there. But it was that went on longer than it should have. I'll put it that way. It wasn't a small brawl. It went on longer than it should have. The DBs, you mentioned them. Man, I saw Cortland Sutton and Emmanuel get free. I don't want to say routinely, but it was often enough that it was noticeable, which is a big thing here in Denver, because we don't have deep speed. And so when we see guys get free deep, something's going on. And I don't know if it was a result of busted coverages over and over. I don't know what it was, but we routinely saw guys, and one of them, Sherman, covered Sutton as good as you could possibly cover him, and he just happened to make a great play on it. But there were a couple of them there. Emmanuel and Sutton getting free. Trinity Benson got free on a couple that you were just looking at, like, how are our guys getting free when they're not exactly the world's fastest animals. So.
All right, Scott, the floor is yours, buddy.
I suppose we've been hearing about the 49ers DBs. That was a problem last year. Busted coverages, guys getting beaten. Does it look like one of the big narratives is Sherman still got kind of long speed and things, and that's something to look at? And then the other one, I guess, is Witherspoon versus Verrett. That's the big competition on the other side. How much kind of Jason Verrett did you see, and how much of Sherman and his kind of long speed was apparently there or not there the past kind of few sessions?
Well, Sherman hung with Cortland Sutton, so that's what it is. And if you were to relate this to Madden, Sutton's kind of that 88 speed guy. You know what I mean? Like, Sherman's not hanging with Emmanuel. He's not hanging with. If Marquise Goodwin was lined up against him, Goodwin would roast him. He's not able to do that against. So he has to technique those guys, and he does, and he finesses them. And he gets in their head too. He likes to chirp at them and get in their head, and it works. And so he's got what I call the John Stockton mentality. I don't know, you guys were around when Stockton and Malone went up against 2 young bucks and Chris Webber and Jason Williams when they were on the Kings, and everybody had the Kings favored because of the athleticism. And Stockton and Malone played old man basketball pinching their elbows and slapping them on the backside and rubbing their butts while they were in the post. And I mean, just everything they could to mess with them and get in their heads. And they did. And they ultimately won that series. So I think Sherman's got a little bit of that to his game. That secondary would be concerning to me, specifically with the scheme shift that you guys have now. You guys used to run the same defense that they ran here last year. It's kind of that Wade Phillips, 34 or 43 under, one defensive end up. So it looks like a 34 and ultimately like a 5-3 kind of thing. And you're not running that anymore. You're kind of running a wide 9 with stacked linebackers and hot swappable safeties. So that's the Schwartz kind of blueprint. So you need corner if your guys don't get there, your corners are on an island. And so you need corners to be able to keep up with the deep speed. And I did not see that consistently.
Is there much evidence that they're going to kind of 2 high shells to try and counter that as well? Because apparently that's one of the things
that seemed to be the base, was 2 deep man under, as far as that goes. Now, whether that was by design or they were just doing that for practice, or I don't know. But it was definitely one of those things where it was noticeable, and they did go after Tart got worked. It was almost exclusively 2 high.
Yeah,
they would show 2 and go 4 high sometimes as well.
That's very interesting. And how did your defense look against our starting team? I know, you talked about some individual plays, but do you think Jimmy Garoppolo in particular, this is what I'm curious about, did he do enough to warrant not playing on Monday, tomorrow night?
I would play him. I think Jimmy's got to prove some things. I would play him. I thought that they looked admirable against what I think is going to be a good defense. On day 2, they drove down and scored in the team period, and Denver did not drive down and score against San Fran. But on day 1, they were overmatched. Day 1 was clearly both defenses won. Day 2, the offenses looked a lot better. Broncos didn't score. The Niners did.
And then just a quick follow up on that. You guys have a really good defensive line, and the Niners have a bunch of injuries all across that offensive line right now. How did your defensive line look against our offensive line?
Pretty good. They were getting after it. He did not have time to throw in 11s. By the way, send me Buckner. That man is an animal. Send me Buckner. That dude was everywhere. He was the most disruptive player on the field, honestly, on the defensive side of the ball. He was an absolute. They had no answer for him. But Chubb and Von Miller on the Broncos side of the house, they got there. Now Von didn't play the second day. The first day he was kind of being experimental, kind of trying some new moves out, trying things out. Try to defend this kind of thing, just to kind of see. What it was he could do and get back in the swing of things. Bradley Chubb was just mauling folks. And by the way, one of the things I talked to Mike McGlinchey before he was drafted on the phone. I never realized just how huge that man is. He stood next to Joe Staley, and Joe Staley looked like a Smurf. Like it was standing next to each other. You're like, Joe Staley's an offensive lineman? Holy heck. I mean, this dude was huge. Mike McGlinchey is a big, bad man.
Go ahead, Scott.
I'm just enjoying to hear that. I mean, despite being a big bad man, Trevor and Von going against him, that's fantastic work for McGlinchey. Kind of how did the interior line? That's the kind of problematic area for the 49ers at the moment, is who's on the interior and how they kind of falling up against the offensive defensive interiors. Because last year we often saw Rich Burkos, who hasn't been playing, get drafted back into the backfield for the snap, which was blowing up kind of the outside zone stuff. How did the interior line look, and how are they holding up against some of the talent that we know the Broncos have?
Well, I would say that Shelby Harris generally got the better at the 0-1 tech than the others did. Gotsis was, I don't want to say he was a non-factor, but he really wasn't, disruptive. He just kind of contained and held his end. As far as getting after it, most of the Broncos pressure comes from the outside. If they're getting A-gap pressure, it's Shelby. They're not really bringing a linebacker downhill like they have in previous years. Very rarely. If they do, they might shoot a safety through there or something too, just to throw them off. But it's really, they're sending 4 guys after the quarterback, or 5 guys tops after the quarterback, and it's the 3 linemen and the 2 edge guys. So I think that if the Niners in this game, if they were running like a quick fullback curl or run it up the gut, I think those plays are going to be successful, even with the injuries to the offensive linemen, simply by virtue of scheme. But I didn't see one side dominate the other on the interior of your line.
All right. So I don't want to hold you for too much longer. We appreciate your time and everything like that. I have a quick question though. What should we expect to see in this matchup tomorrow night? Give us some games or some people that you saw clashing heads, and maybe something to look for, maybe some more sparks, or just individual matches you saw that you took notice to?
I would watch when Tim Patrick is on the field. He's got some real hurt feelings about you guys cutting him, and he made those abundantly clear both days in interviews. So he's got a real sore spot or a chip there that he uses that for fuel, and he looked good out there in both days. He's had some drops lately, so it was nice to see him kind of shake out of that. I would say if you're going to look for players in this game, Phil Lindsay, Khalfani Muhammad, those guys they're incredibly fast. Watch them get to the edge in wide zone. Look for the Broncos to go to the tight end a lot on the stick route. That's probably going to be the direction that they'll go to move the chains, and then they'll try to get you off boot action on a deep crosser once those safeties suck in on the stick route. Conversely, with you guys, I would say see how long Sherman plays, get in people's heads. Watch those linebackers and see if they're able to cover Fant when they're required to do it, because they're going to go to him a lot. The Broncos will force feed Fant. They've done that the first two games, so it'd be interesting to see. So again, you guys are going to be more of the wide. The offenses are pretty similar. Obviously, with Scangarello coming over, they're going to be similarities. They're both wide zone, offenses. With boot action to strike deep. Defensively, it'll be interesting to see how the corners hold up against the Broncos receivers. Not a lot of speed. I would say that the fastest guys on the Broncos, on the front end are Emmanuel Sanders. You got a few guys down roster that are vying for spots, and Kelvin McKnight, Trinity Benson. Those guys have a little bit of speed. Brendan Langley, who got thrown out of practice. Those guys are vying for roster spots. So you may see them in the second half a little bit. But overall, I would say, man, this is going to be interesting to watch. The matchup really to watch for me is the Broncos offense against the Niners defense, if they can get anything done. The Broncos defense is good. The Niners offense is good, but, you're not going to see – they're not going to dominate, certainly. But that's the matchup to watch is when the Broncos are on offense, how the Niners defense hold up. If they hold up well, I think you guys have a good shot this year. They start hemorrhaging points to the Denver Broncos, you got a problem.
Doesn't sound like you have high hopes for that Broncos offense. Flacco not looking good out there for you guys, man?
He's okay. They just don't have a lot of depth. They don't have a lot of speed outside of Sanders. Fant is a rookie, and he's still trying to learn it. And then the running back split between Freeman and Lindsey looks good until you start getting the safeties down in the box, and then it's just tough for Flacco to do anything. So I'm not expecting major offensive fireworks out of the Broncos this year. I think they'll be competent. I don't think they'll be terrible, but they're not certainly going to be a top 12, top 15 offense.
All right, Scott, any other questions for him?
I was just wondering about Malik Reed. I think he ended up in Denver quite late. I think he was a little kind of – a lot of 49ers fans wanted him very late just to kind of land here as a little developmental pass rusher. Is he going to get snaps, and how's he looking?
Depends on how he comes back. He's a little dinged up right now. He has been on fire, actually. When he was at minicamp, he got embarrassed when Drew Lock truck sticked him on a carry, and the whole team saw it. They happened right in front of the sideline where everyone saw it. Like, Drew Lock just put the shoulder down and just kept on rolling right through him, and he's been on fire ever since then. He has been a camp standout. In fact, he's making this team. He'll be the fourth outside linebacker behind Vaughn and Bradley Chubb and Justin Hollins. So he's definitely going to make this team. I hope he gets a chance to play. I don't know that they're going to rush him back from that injury that quick, though.
Sad times. But good luck to him.
All right, Ben, is there anything that you're working on that you want people to know about that are going to see this video? We're going to put this in, and Broncos fans, 49er fans are going to be checking this thing out. And I know you're all over the place. You got stuff with iHeartRadio and everything. So let the people know something about yourself, and then let them know if you're working on anything, what to look out for.
Well, I just appreciate everybody paying attention, and they can unfollow me at Allbright NFL if they don't like it. So, other than that, man, I'm pretty ubiquitous, and I put most of it on Twitter. So if there's something you want to find, video or the stream of the show, or a work during the game, since I'm working the games this year, you can get all that info from Twitter.
All right. Again, guys, we want to thank you all for checking us out here today. Benjamin's been kind enough to take some time out of his busy schedule and join us here. I know he's got a lot going on over there. You guys can give him a follow on Twitter, Allbright, ALL, 2 L's in there. I made a mistake the first time we had him on here and then spelled it with the 1 L. But Allbright, on NFL, no underscore at all. You guys give him a follow over there. Make sure you guys check him out. He does a lot of good work for the Broncos, and very open guys. It's not his first time working with us, so we definitely appreciate him for stopping by. Thank you very much, man. If at any time you want to jump off, you can. I wanted to have a little dialogue with Scott back and forth about what we're going to be looking for in the game, so we do truly want to thank you guys Thank you, Ben, for joining us. And you guys make sure you give him a follow on Twitter. His handle is there on the screen now. You guys can see that right there. All right.
All righty. I'm going to let you guys go. I got to run.
All right. You take care. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, Scott. So that's going to be it for the Benjamin Allbright portion of the Behind Enemy Lines, man. Normally what we do is we have the Fangirls representative come on here. She couldn't make it. And I think Benjamin Allbright is going to give you guys a fair assessment of what's going on. And plus, he was there at the joint practices, so he has a little bit more insight. So hopefully you guys are satisfied with some of the things that we were able to provide you guys with. Scott, man, he didn't say that Jimmy looked bad, but he said, I would play him. Shanahan said it depends on how practice went, how much we were going to see Jimmy Garoppolo, if at all. And to me, it sounded like, well, if he looked like he was okay, then maybe we won't put him out there. No need to expose him to the elements or the field or any extra time if we didn't have to. Ben said that he seems like maybe he should get some snaps out there. How did you interpret that message when he said that?
Yeah, I think it was kind of he sounded like he struggled against when there are 11 men on the field, basically, when you have a pass rush in your face, when you're trying to make decisions based on that, when the play clock, your internal play clock is being manipulated and challenged by the defense doing things that obviously they're not allowed to do in 7-on-7. Things got a little bit more difficult for Jimmy, as well as I guess the defense can roll coverage a little bit more when it's 11-on-11. They're going to do things that are a bit different. And it's at that point that he struggled. And so that makes you think, well, maybe that is a good reason to get him a little bit of game time, even if it's just a series or two series. Try and get him out there. If you see the Broncos kind of blitzing excessively against Garoppolo, perhaps, maybe that's a time when you just sort of take him out of the game and just say, we don't want to risk that. But seeing as they are a team that sounds like they're going to be rushing 4, dropping 7 into coverage, this is a decent opportunity just to get Jimmy Garoppolo in, playing against 11 men on defense, getting the ball in his hands, in a game atmosphere with the stadium, away game, all those things, just a little bit of adversity potentially. It's a good opportunity to get him snaps and get him the ball, I think.
Absolutely. We have this thing going like where, we don't want to see our guys exposed. We don't want to see them hurt. But I do believe that guys who are working back from injuries sometimes need to get a little bit more than what they would if they didn't have any injury. So I hope that the Niners put Jimmy Garoppolo out there, and it's interesting because this Denver's defense is really good, but we know how the players, they have a ton of talent out there, and we know what Vic Fangio can do with the defense. It's going to be really interesting to see. I can't picture them blitzing a lot. That wasn't really Fangio's thing. I mean, he did it like when, he needed to, a lot of times coaches or coordinators outsmart themselves, but Fangio typically sticks to his guns. And if a game is getting out of hand or, it's a pressure situation, you got the game locked as long as you can get a stop, he'll send some pressure. But I can't imagine him doing too much of that in the preseason. I would hope that he and Kyle talk and they can come to some kind of understanding. Not saying don't blitz your guys, because you also want to work that in live reps also. You know what I mean? But I don't think he could be doing it excessively. We have seen, though, a couple preseasons ago where teams came out and just blitzed nonstop. I think it was, I don't remember if it was Tom Sula or Chip Kelly. It was a couple of years ago. But there was a game in the preseason. I mean, they were just blitzing. They were beating the hell out of our quarterbacks. I can't remember which quarterback it was, but it was bad. It might have been Cap, actually. They were beating him up pretty bad in preseason. I was like, all right, we got to pull this guy out of there. But I don't think they're going to do anything like that. What are some of the matchups you're looking forward to seeing in this game tomorrow?
Well, after what Ben Allbright said, I think Tart that tight end might be an interesting one, because I mean that is one of the things that Tart prides himself on is being able to cover those guys man on man. He's had some battles with Kittle. I understand that he's been quite happy in training camp about his performances on Kittle, and obviously the fan situation of the Iowa boy. If he's put him on ice, put him on skates at one point, then Tart's going to want to kind of, when everyone can see it, Tart's going to want to be the guy who kind of wins that battle. I mean, another battle then, of course, is then equally kind of the Broncos kind of gadget players, because that's what they've got, a lot of good guys. I mean, basically Philip Lindsay and Noah Fant are going to be their two big guys. So then also Philip Lindsay on basically Greenlaw, Warner. How does he look versus those? If any of these players are out there, of course, how do those guys look on each other? Because that's again an exciting development that we're hoping to see more of this year. Is Fred Warner really kind of coming into his own and being a dominant player on this defense? So there'd be a couple of matchups, at least on the Denver offense, 49ers defense, that I'd be excited to have a look at.
Yeah, I just recently heard an interview with Tart, and he was talking about how Kittle doesn't beat him in one-on-ones or something like that. He was saying something along those lines, and then I heard that about Fant. Some of the reports coming out of Iowa were that Fant and what was the other guy's name? The other tight end that came out. Oh my God, Hawkinson. They were both more physically gifted than George Kittle. That was the report coming out. So, Kittle is. I'm not saying that he's not as good as those guys as far as physicality goes, but he's had a year in the league to mature already. This will be his third year already, and he also benefits from a really, really good system here. So we can expect something like that from those guys. I do want to see what Tar can do, and hopefully they play him out there a little bit. I just don't know what to expect, man. I'll be honest with you. I've been trying to figure out how much of our starters we're going to see since they did this joint practice. You know what I mean? So it's going to be a little hodgepodge. One matchup in particular I'm looking forward to seeing is, again, I asked Benjamin about it, our offensive line against their defensive line. They have one of the nicest defensive fronts in the NFL, and we're hoping to emulate something like that here. But in the meantime, our offensive line is going through it, and we have to see these guys try to hold up against some of the top talent in the NFL. So I'm looking forward to that one a lot as well. Are you going to be able to catch it live? I know it's going to be a late one for you over there. How are you going to watch this one, or when do you think you're going to get around to seeing it?
I think I might watch the first quarter, try and see the starters. I think I'd like to try and watch the starters. The last preseason game, I was actually doing something the next day, so I couldn't stay up and watch it. Otherwise, I'd have been a dead man the next day. But this one, I think I'm going to try and watch at least the first quarter, see how those guys go, and then I'll save kind of watching where the real juicy stuff on the roster is happening for the next day. I'll probably watch that a couple of times as well, because the free safety battle is interesting now. Like, how's Colbert got 7 snaps, and we know he's losing ground hard because he started last year, free safety 1. Like, he was the king. Everyone loved Adrian Colbert. He was like everyone's favorite defensive player on this team, if you ask them, was Adrian Colbert and Reuben Foster starting last season. And then that's like a lesson in how quickly things change. One of them's off the roster. One of them, Jimmy Ward, gets hurt, becomes the free safety 1 again, opportunity to kind of reclaim his crown. And now he's probably free safety 3 when Ward comes back healthy. Tavares Moore sounds like he's separated. He's going to be interesting to watch, but then how does Adrian Colbert respond? Are we going to see juiced up Colbert, but to the extent that he can actually stay on the field? Because they'll be disagreeing, but I thought his hit was a reckless hit. The guy needs to be out on the field. You can't be hitting someone with your helmet on kind of their like neck, lower helmet area, and challenging the refs to throw a flag there in preseason when you know they're going to be throwing flags like crazy because they want those kind of plays where they're saying, later on when he talks to the refs, this was a penalty, this wasn't a penalty, but we flagged it, to kind of almost draw it up and make their lives easier. But Colbert needs to be on the field, and Colbert needs to play a good, I hope, sort of 30-40 snaps where we see kind of how he looks. And then the receivers as well, like Richie James, Kendrick Bourne, I've forgotten all of our other receivers, like Point Dexter, Malik Henry, all those guys, like these bottom of the roster receivers. Trent Taylor, we know, is injured. Like, who's going to separate themselves from that group? How's Jordan Matthews look? All those guys, like, that's going to be a fascinating thing to watch this game, because as we've heard, this is a good defense. They've got good talent, but also like they might be a bit weak at linebacker, and then that's where those guys are going to be getting across the middle often against the backup corners like Richie James. Like, how's he going to look against Isaac Yiadom, who we know is a pretty good cornerback? All these like bottom of the roster battles are going to be intriguing, and this is going to be, I think, their big game to make an impression, because next game we're going to see starters.
You're absolutely right. And, this is something that I've been thinking about. They used Richie James a lot last game, some even more than what the stat sheet shows, because some things came back because of penalties and all. I'm interested to see Richie James be used downfield. We didn't get to see that a lot, and people, well, never mind. I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but there's some talk about his usage and if it can translate to other ways of being utilized, I should say. So I'm very interested to see Richie James in a bigger role or an expanded role, just to see what he can do. And if he can't do it, then we know this guy is a 6 or 7 yard route runner, and that's all we're going to get from him. But I would like to see him be used a little bit more downfield. That also is going to depend on what the offensive line can do in protecting the quarterbacks. Another position that I'm interested to see, I know we all like the running backs. But I am happy to hear that Jeff Wilson is back in camp. I heard that he had a good week of practice here. He was coming out and he looked to be the physical guy. He added some weight. So I'm excited and anxious to see my guy Jeff Wilson back out there in the fray and just see if he can push. I mean, you never know, right? You don't know what's going to happen. We have no idea what we're going to get, if anything, out of Jerick McKinnon. He might start the season on IR. It's another position that, another roster spot that maybe Jeff Wilson can take, and he'd be that physical back, that short yardage guy that we don't seem to have, with everyone else that's here. And then, last but certainly not least, is that I want to see some separation. I want to see some definition between these corners, the starting corners. A lot of people are saying Ahkello Witherspoon isn't going to be the guy. It's going to be Verrett. People are saying Sherman and all. I want one of these guys to definitively come out and say, I'm going to be the guy. And then it also goes for the nickel guy. Kwan Williams was a favorite of the previous regime. The guy that loved him is gone. And Emmanuel Mosley is looking really, really good out there. And so there's a lot to watch for. This is going to be a really exciting game. And hopefully we could see a little bit more scheme because, like we were saying, the 49ers, the fans are familiar with Fangio's defense. And he was heralded for what he did last year in Chicago. It was what warranted him getting this job. And our defense is going to be very familiar with this offense because it's a former position coach here that's the coordinator over there. And so this is something that we could really, really take advantage of. It could be a really good chess game, even with the backups out there. And this is going to be something this is as even of a training ground as you're going to get, and you get to put it all on Monday Night Football. So I'm anxious and excited to see it.
Yeah, Jeff Wilson, I think, is exciting. I mean, what is he? He's 215 pounds now, so he's 15 pounds up than he was last year. And he was running over Seahawks defenders. And we know what the Seahawks defense are like and their physicality and all that. Jeff Wilson was truck sticking those dudes, and he's heavier now. Hopefully, I mean, did he have a tweak? Was it a niggle he had?
I think it was like an ankle or a knee or something like that. It wasn't anything like super bad though. But he came back from, and they say he's looking really good now. So.
Yeah, it's just one of those ones where you kind of, when you hear a player put 15 pounds on in an off season, especially at a position where your like quickness is such an important aspect. It's not uncommon to get those like muscular injuries, perhaps like joint issue, that kind of thing early on. So it's going to be interesting to see how well he comes back from that, how good he looks movement wise at that position. Because I'm with you, I would love to see Jeff Wilson dominate, and it's been tough for Jerick McKinnon, but he's an expensive player. I mean, if you can get a guy who you're going to get what Jerick McKinnon can offer. Matt Breeder's receiving improved massively last season. Don't think he dropped anything. Generally speaking, he was an impressive receiver threat. Tevin Coleman was added. Reading between the lines, the 49ers have been concerned about Jerick McKinnon's knee for a while because we know they were in on Le'Veon Bell. We know that they were interested in Bell. It didn't quite work out for them. Tevin Coleman was then brought in. So I think maybe it was like, I know some guys in the chat were like, Jerick McKinnon's knee is not going to be what we think it is. And that's a sign that maybe you can replace however much they're spending on Jerick McKinnon this year, which is a considerable amount of money for a potential like third string running back. You can get that out of basically a combination of Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Jerick McKinnon could be out, and that's why again these games are going to be interesting for Raheem Mostert as well. I mean, how good is he looking? He looked good in like a couple of snaps last week. I think he got a bang on the head or something. He wasn't in there very long, but that's another guy's like him and Jeff Wilson have got a real chance now to supplant Jerick McKinnon and get themselves as running backs 3 and 4 on the roster.
Very interesting. I never even considered, and you guys know I'm a big Raheem Mostert supporter. I never considered him supplanting Jerick McKinnon. It'll be interesting, man. It's a lot of money going that would have been for naught, but we'll see what happens there. There was a previous comment up here about I want to see some turnovers. I heard about the 49ers defense getting a pick 6 or 2 in the team drills. But we've been hearing about a lot of turnovers in camp. Now, I'll go out on a limb. I think that it's been more than what we heard this time last year. However, I do remember at the beginning of last year, I mean, it was all about Reuben Foster and his interceptions. There were a lot of those happening in camp last year, and then it just vanished last year. We didn't see it, and so did the player. But I'm hoping to see some turnovers and see them happening out on the field. If you were to give me a number here, I'm going to put it at 1.5 over under for turnovers for the 49ers in this upcoming game. You can take the over or the under, or you're going to break even. You can't break even with 1.5, so you got to pick.
I think I might take the over. I think Drew Lock is a little error prone. We know Robert Saleh, or Flacco. We know he loves overthrowing people. I think, if you're like a post safety in this game, you're probably going to be thinking, I don't want to get too close to the receivers if they're on crosses in case the ball sort of floats over their head. We know Robert Saleh likes sending blitzes, like on key third downs. He likes those kind of 5-man pressures. Those are sort of, I understand that was Tavares Moore interception. It was, I think, Fred Warner, we heard, was the guy who came through the middle and with the pressure, and that was caused an overthrow that just like hit Tavares Moore in the hands.
Exactly.
It's those types of things, like the pressure is what we're going to see, and that should unsettle the quarterbacks, I think. And with us playing a lot of zone coverage, guys have got their eyes on the quarterback. I would expect to see maybe, I think we can get 1 or 2 turnovers, 2 turnovers at least. And we also heard that Fred Warner's been stripping the ball a lot.
Yes.
And if they're talking about turnovers, like he's stripping the ball, the other linebackers are all going to be thinking, let's get the ball out. We know Azeez Al-Shaair can run and hit. Dre Greenlaw can run and hit. I mean, I would think we can probably get at least 2 on Sunday night or Monday night. Monday night.
Yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm with you on the over. I know the time's getting close where he says it's right there. I'm with you on the over, man. I think we can get a couple of turnovers here this week. Doesn't mean that we won't give it up either, but I can see us getting a couple of turnovers. So I'm with you on the over. I think that is it. I do want to bounce something off you. So Fresh wrote a comment in here, and it kind of prompted me to think something here. His comment was, would love to see a schedule put out for 2 joint practices for every NFL team to replace 2 preseason games. I think that could work. They're talking about expanding the games. They want to go to 18. I would sacrifice 2 preseason games if the 2 that we have are joint practices, a little more intense. And then you can go to 18 games. I kind of like that. What's your thoughts on that, man? Jerry has a good point here.
It's funny. I actually tweeted something very similar yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before. But it was basically, I agree. I think they should 2 preseason games, and I think the NFL should create a window for 2 joint practices. And I would like to see maybe one of those be against someone you play in preseason, but the other one be against a completely different team. So you don't play them after 2 joint practices, but rather than having like 2 joint practices like we did this time, maybe you have a week of joint practices or 3 or 4 joint practices against that team. So again, hopefully it's a more controlled environment for contact and quarterbacks getting hit and people falling over, and et cetera, but you're still getting that like opposition experience of playing a different group of players, because ultimately that's all preseason really is as an exercise for a lot of these guys. It's just go against someone different that you're not playing against week in, week out in training, day in, day out in training, go against a different scheme, go against a different individual, all these different things. And at preseason, it's got to the point where it's a bit risky. And the only thing that I think the NFL wants preseason for at this point is to test penalties. Like this, as far as that seems like that's kind of the only thing that they, and it's obviously in the CBA, but like, I agree. I do think fewer preseason games, more joint practices. Now, whether that comes with an 18-game season, I don't know, because the thing that they've spoken about with the 18-game season is, you'd maybe have some players, you just wouldn't play them. I think that's a problem, because I think at the end of the day, like, fans pay for a product and they pay to be in the stadium. How pissed off will you be if you've got like 49ers tickets and that game they're like, oh, we're not playing Garoppolo today. Garoppolo's not going to play. Butler's not going to play. So you should, like, you're an East Coast fan. The 49ers are on the East Coast for like one of their like 2 East Coast games in the season, and they decide that's the game. That's the road game. They're basically just going to throw and not play those guys. So maybe you play an 18-game season, but I think you have to have at least 2, maybe even 3 bye weeks in that case, so that you can play all players. I would prefer to have a 16-game season still, with bye weeks, with a bye week after the playoffs. But just like expand the season potentially to, if you want to have 18 games, maybe have 17 games. Like, you could do it, but at this point is like the player welfare considerations have to be there in terms of like bye weeks, without damaging a product by having certain most likely road games that teams just throw because they decide they're not going to play all their starters basically.
You know what's interesting is that I think that the NFL is one of very few places where home field advantage is a thing. I think it exists. You can get some momentum and more energy and just a little bit more from players. And as soon as I heard that whole, 2 games and you got players who can still only play 16 games because of the CBA contracts, that's why that rule is in there right now. It's because of the CBA. But they were talking about that. And immediately I thought the exact opposite of what you just said. I think that you'll see some of the stars sitting out for the home games because of the home field advantage, and maybe you get some momentum, and the season ticket holders will go, I was going to say ape-ish, but they're going to go crazy if that happens. They're not going to want to see that. And so it's not a rule that I think is going to happen. But yeah, they absolutely want to practice the penalties and all the different rules and, see how kickoffs are going to go. Kickoffs are the big thing, and the new field goal rules and extra point rules and all that stuff. So it's absolutely what that's there for. These referees have to get into mid-season form as well, and it starts there too. So yeah, that's really it though, Scott, man. I don't have much else to discuss or go over for the game. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on for this upcoming matchup that you want to get off your chest?
No, just let's hope we don't see too much CJ Bethel. I think at this point we need his trade value to be as high as possible, and we might need to delete that bit of the Allbright video in case any scouts see or anyone like that.
And it's so funny because the Niner fans are like, "Oh, we got to trade CJ. There's no value. There's nothing there right now. It's just not. If a quarterback is going to be traded, it's going to be Mullins. That's just the bottom line. It's going to be Mullins, and we're going to be left with the worst of the two because if you're going to move someone, you're going to get something for them. So that's what it comes down to. But all right, guys, we hope you guys really, really enjoyed the show. My man Benjamin Allbright was here. I hope you guys got a chance to see him. If not, as soon as this ends, you'll be able to run it back and check him out. He had some good insight. He had the eyes and ears there live at the joint practices with the 49ers against the Denver Broncos. And then he also was able to break down a couple of things that he saw, so gave us some opinions on everything. And he even talked about the dust up, Fred Warner being the cause of it all. I kind of liked hearing that. You know what I'm saying? My man Scott was here with me today, man. You guys, Scott, give him your Twitter handle and everything. Let him know where to find you and follow you. I will type it in as you were saying it, so that way I can put it up on the screen here. But you guys make sure you give Scott a follow, okay?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is basically my name with an underscore in the middle, at Scott_Geelan with the capital S and G, I believe. Yeah, that's my Twitter handle. So yeah, give me a follow. I talk about American football on there, and I also talk about real football, aka soccer, on there as well.
Real football. You guys hear I'm talking junk and throwing jabs. It's all good. But you guys make sure you give him a follow, okay? The Twitter handle is right there on your screen. So make sure you guys hook him up over there. Another Nothing But Niners guy that you guys are all probably very familiar with. All right. And then you guys know me already. I'm 49ers Mike _NFL. The Twitter page is nothing but the number 9 ERS. You guys give us follows over there. Let us know your questions, and we will see you guys later this evening for another show, okay? I know some people were in there asking about Nick. Nick will be back. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. You give us a follow on all of those different avenues I was talking about. There's the Twitter and Snapchat on the screen right there, the Facebook page, as well as the Instagram. It's Nothing But Niners. And last but certainly not least, we have the website. All right, guys, so this is going to conclude our Behind Enemy Lines, the Denver Broncos with Benjamin Allbright section that we have here. And you guys know the deal. Prepare for glory, anticipate pain, but always remain faithful. We're out of here. Bang.